When you say foreign exchange, that's something that I think in crypto, most people just say either I'm in like the crypto universe or I'm in the Bitcoin universe. There's really not any exchange between those two assets. How do you think about foreign exchange and like what you guys can do for corporations?
So Circle just came out with a Euro stablecoin as well, right? And the markets are nowhere near as deep as traditional finance. Forex is very deep for the major currencies. But feasibly, if they get as deep, the trading pools, for example, between like USDC, USD Euro, then you have a more efficient system. Anything done on chain involves less pen and paper, less transaction costs, 24/7. Weekends you can have your money. We definitely see that happening. I mean, DeFi definitely proved that it works in this downturn. They were the ones who got paid first. They were senior on everything from all the crashes. So.
Explain that more. Like there's centralized finance, there's decentralized finance. You said that DeFi works and they got paid first. What do you mean?
Yeah, so some of the people who paused withdrawals, for example, they were borrowing from DeFi protocols. And if they didn't pay back those loans, they would have had their collateral liquidated. Now in CeFi, there's things like bankruptcy, there's cronyism, there's favoritism, et cetera. DeFi protocols are dumb in the best way. They're dumb in the best way, which means you can't call someone. You get liquidated. If you don't actually, pay your interest, pay your loan back, it's over. And that's what you actually saw on chain. There was no nonsense with them. So that's product market fit. I mean, there's no question about people rehypothecating or repledging collateral in two different places, for example. It's just you give the collateral in the form of Bitcoin to a DeFi protocol or ETH, and you have to pay or you get liquidated. And that transparency was so key in downturns like this.
When I hear people say that DeFi worked and CeFi didn't, I think that is probably too much of a reductionist perspective of obviously Luna, UST, those that kind of ecosystem did not work. And then obviously on the centralized side, there's company, take a Coinbase, right? Yeah. Zero issue, all of that. So how do you think about CeFi versus DeFi given what we've watched play out over the last 3-4 months?
So DeFi I think is very good at over-collateralized lending and borrowing because it can automate a lot of that. That's not a giant market though. Ultimately, if more of this kind of lending activity takes place on chain, it's more efficient and it's at lower cost. So this world of kind of CDeFi is coming out, which is really CeFi but on chain. There are protocols like Maple Finance, for example, that are doing that. And when you have these protocols on chain, you avoid pen and paper, you avoid Telegram chats, you avoid a lot of the issues. So there is certainly a place for both. DeFi is doing very well on over-collateralized right now. Under-collateralized is a different story.
I've seen people pitching under-collateralized on-chain lending. Yeah. Is that possible? And what are your thoughts in terms of how viable that will be in the DeFi world, but without the over-collateralization?
It's extremely hard, and it's not viable. It's in the long run, it probably is. But what is missing is the regulatory aspect. I mean, if someone doesn't pay you unsecured, you have to go to court ultimately. You don't have my collateral if that happens, and so we don't have police forces. We don't have court systems on chain right now. And there's no concept of credit scores on chain. So that's why collateral is king on chain. That's why over-collateralized lending is the first kind of lending that takes place on chain. So when you have these kind of court systems on chain or regulatory bodies that recognize that this is a loan on chain and they come in and intervene, that's how you can do unsecured lending or credit scores on chain.
You just said collateral is king. When the finance world of Wall Street kind of traditional system sees collateral is king on chain, why don't they all just run and be like, oh my God, we'll never lose money as long as we have over-collateralized lending on chain?
Yeah, I mean, because it's a very small market. That's not the point of credit in most cases. It's mostly, when you do collateralized lending, it's mostly for traders, and there's margin lending and stuff like that. But that's nowhere near, I mean, the entire financial system runs on unsecured lending. Now, getting that on chain is going to be a longer process than most people want to admit, but the over-collateralized part is running like a clock, and that's what we should be grateful for.
Can you decentralize unsecured lending in the sense where reputation, credit scores, like all these things that we know the centralized system relies on, whether they work perfectly or not, like that is how the centralized system works. If you look at something like Bitcoin, the whole idea is that, hey, we can build these banks without rehypothecation. We can essentially go back to kind of a strong financial system that isn't built on this huge credit component.
Yep.
Is the idea of bringing unsecured lending to the DeFi or like on-chain world, just trying to recreate some of the problems from the legacy system in the new world? Or like, how do you just think through what are the pros and cons of doing that?
Look, unsecured lending is going to take place whether it's Bitcoin, whether it's ETH, whether it's dollars. it can be done more efficiently when you have basically an open API, like a compatible API everywhere, which is on chain. So it's going to happen whether we believe in it or like it or not. And yeah, like things like decentralized credit scores and stuff. It could be the case. We have big problems with like oracles right now. The truth is, what we need is what you would want is enforcement if someone doesn't pay you back, and there's no way to enforce it on chain currently. You need like someone to hold you accountable, a court system or something like that, and we're a long way from that, obviously.